Alright. So remember, absolute value usually involves two answers, okay? Because it says distance from some middle number. So you can have a distance point in here, and with absolute value, it's asking you, well, what number is this far away and the same distance this far away? Okay, so you usually get two answers. Right? And usually one's to the right is positive, one to the left is negative. So that's why we do one positive, one negative. Okay? So we can say like 2w equals 12 and 2w equals 12 but with a negative. Yeah. And that's how you get your two answers for each one. The algebra is the same to solve. Divide by 2 on both sides. So we'll get w is 6, and then we also get w is negative 6. Now don't mistake that, well, since this one is negative 6 and this problem is positive 6, that all of them are just the same number. One's positive, one negative. That is not true. Sometimes it is, sometimes it is not. Now, let's look at 2. More of the same. If you try to break this up, and you try to do it like this, like one positive, one negative, first of all, this is incorrect for a reason hopefully you know already. But then, once you go through and do this, wrong, and you get these answers, how do you know that these answers are wrong? So that's why in the directions it says to check. I know some of you see that check and you're like, oh no, that's extra 10 seconds of writing to see if I got an A or not, to see if I got it right. You know, yeah, it's 10 seconds to see if you got 100%. That's the way you should look at it. It's a good thing. Alright, so once you plug it in and you try to check, you do 4 minus 1, and if it's correct answer, if 4 is correct, you should get the same number on both sides. As you see here, you get 4 minus 1, which is 3. Absolute value of 3 does not equal negative 5, which means that's not a right answer. Same thing over here. If you plug in negative 4 minus 1, right, absolute value, that should equal negative 5. And then when you do this, you get absolute value of negative 5 equals negative 5. But absolute value of negative 5 is 5. Which does not equal negative 5. So that means this is not an answer. And that might help you reconsider, well, I'll just break it up into 2 real fast. And then after maybe some looking at your notes or something, you might remember that this is a distance. Right? The left side represents a distance, and the right side says it's negative. It's impossible for a distance to be negative, and that's why none of these answers are working. That's because there is no solution to this. Whenever distance is equal to a negative, that is impossible. So the check will help you here. Okay, the check.
Yeah, no, 5 plus 2.
Okay, 6, whatever. Sorry. Yep. 6, 5. Yeah, still doesn't equal negative 5. But one way or another, that's the reason for doing the checks, okay, to see if you're actually correct, and that's what you're graded on, is the correct answer. Alright, so there's some others that have the some values outside of absolute value, so you want to take care of those first. So if you have multiplying by 1/2, you can multiply by that reciprocal, cancel it out. So we got n plus 2 equals 20, and then go ahead and break it up into your 2. What plus 2 equals 20, and what plus 2 equals, plus 2 equals negative 20. Okay, and there are your two answers. And it does say to check, so you should probably check and verify that each of these are the correct answer. So the rest of them do have something on the outside, something on the inside, and you just have to follow that pattern. Okay. So a -7 is on the outside of the absolute value, so do that first. Do the opposite, add 7. Notice how you don't want to say, well, this one has no solution because there's a negative here. As soon as you do add 7 to both sides, it's positive and it's perfectly fine. Yeah, what plus 8 equals 4? And what plus 8 equals -4? Same algebra everywhere. -4 and -12. Good. So, there's 2 answers here.
I forgot to check that one.
I already talked about checking. This is more of a conceptual question since it's equal to 0. It's asking, well, what numbers are 0 away from 0? You're just getting up, well, there's only one number. Whenever you have the distance is 0, kind of wherever you're starting, in this case, since it's just absolute value of u, you only have one answer. If you go through the steps, you would end up doing a +0 and a -0, but you'd stop yourself and say, well, you can't have a positive -0. So, yeah, that's possible to have just one answer. So you can have 2 answers, 1 answer, or no solution if it's a negative. 6 has 2 numbers on the outside. If you're confused, well, should I get rid of the 5 first or the 6 first? Those are the 2 things on the outside. Just ask yourself, well, what would you do if you're solving this? Right? You'd probably subtract 5 on both sides, then divide by 6 on both sides. That has not changed. So we don't have to learn a new order to do things. We just have to do the same thing we've always done. So we get absolute value of x minus 2 equals 3. Good. And now you can break it up. So notice that I'm not breaking it up until I have only absolute value. So now I can do what minus 2 is 3 and what minus 2 is -3 and solve both of those. There we go. I want you to check and verify those are correct. So, number 7, what numbers, this is, if you read this, have a distance that is less than 3 away from 0? What numbers are less than 3 away from 0? One way of looking at that is saying, well, just like before, break it up into 2 parts. You're going to switch the second one to -3, just like we always do, but when you do negatives and inequalities, you also flip the sign. So this is saying all the numbers that are less than 3, but greater than -3. So they have to be less than 3, positive, right? Go in this direction. But they have to be greater than -3. So they're going this direction. If you draw that, you just end up getting the 2 to intersect with one another. and your answers are all in between -3 and 3. Another way of writing this answer would be everything between -3 and 3. And that's the format we learned back in January. When it's connected like this, it's like saying all the answers between these small number and big number. Small number on the left, big number on the right. Both inequality signs are always going to be less than or less than equal to, pointing to the left. 8, similar, but it's greater than. What numbers are more than 3 away from 0? So here's 3, here's 0. So everything over here is more than 3 away from 0, 4 away, 5 away, 6 away from 0. And then everything over here is more than 3 away from 0. -4, -5, and so on. So you can, just like the last one, you can break it up into 2 parts, show it this way. First one stays the same. Second one, both signs switch. There is no shortcut for writing it. There's no in-between statement. We just put the word or between them. So think of the greater than sign as, instead of greater, think of a great or. So whenever you have greater, think of the word or will be there in your answer. Good. And let's just do a few more. Okay. Just like above, clear out what's not inside the absolute value first. So that +6 is not there. Go ahead and do that. Okay, so we got 2x minus 5 is less than 15. 2x minus 5 is greater than -15. And you have to solve both of those. That's your 20, huh? There we go. 20. Yeah, so x must be less than 10, but it has to be greater than -5. So it's just saying all the numbers that are between -5 and 10. Everything between -5 and 10. So notice how these are less than, not less than or equal to, so I'm going to use open dots. And I'm randomly placing these on here. Notice when I'm doing my graph, I'm just putting my 2 endpoints, open closed circles, and connecting them. I'm not putting 0 or -4, -3, -2, -1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, everything in between. We don't need to spend time doing that. So when this is being graded, I'm just looking, do you have the right endpoints? Are they open? And is it connected? So as long as you show those basic elements, you've covered everything. Okay. Lastly, what divided by 2 is less than 7, greater than 1? What divided by 2 is less than 7, greater than 1? Less than or equal to -1. So same process. Add 7 to both sides, you get 8. What divided by 2 is less than, add 7 to both sides, you get 6. X must be greater than 16. X must be less than 12. So we put 12 on there. 16 going there. Put the word or in between.